Hey everyone, welcome to Freedom Live. I'm your host, Mike Dano. Tonight we have a special guest joining us tonight. His name is Robert Kruger. He's played a big role in Voluntary Virtues Roundtable, and he hosts his own shows on Voluntary Virtues Network called Voluntary Virtues After Dark and The Anarchist Experience. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight, Rob.
It's Voluntary Virtues After Hours, actually. It's my pleasure.
Oh, my mistake.
Yeah. We continue the Voluntary Virtues Roundtable with whoever wants to join us, and it's a little less structured and a little more free-spirited, vulgar, and obnoxious.
Awesome, man. Yeah, the world needs a little bit more of that.
Absolutely.
Awesome, man. Good stuff. Tonight we'll be discussing the abandonment of rights, but before we do, I always ask my guests a few questions to give the viewer a little background info in case they don't already have some kind of familiarity with them. So I'd like to start off by asking, how did you arrive at your current political philosophy?
Well, let's see. As a young person, I was raised in fairly conservative home. My dad was a Republican. I was kind of a rebel. Didn't like the way that my dad was kind of a domineering jerk. And so, I don't know, I kind of bought into it for a while, thinking that alcohol should be banned and stuff like that, just crazy stuff. And then I went to college, and that's where I rebelled. And I hung out with a bunch of people who smoked pot and got contact highs, and then tried it myself and realized, holy crap, these people are idiots for making this illegal. This is absolutely wonderful stuff. Then I kind of like got bored with it, so I don't really, consider it to be worth doing much anymore. But anyway, I started to get into watching some of the shows that were on the Public Broadcasting Network or PBS, and they had shows that were done by Milton Friedman called Free to Choose, and it was really interesting stuff. I was very, impressed with Milton Friedman's ability to speak and his insights, and so after checking out everything that he did on YouTube, I kind of ran across some videos that were by Stefan Molyneux that I was run into, and so after becoming like a libertarian from the Milton Friedman perspective, seeing the statism is dead, the Matrix, I think it's Statism is Dead Part 3 or 4, and then the Matrix, and then also the Story of Your Enslavement. Those two videos by Molyneux really just rung true with me. I was floored, and I realized that there was no legitimacy to the idea of someone else having authority over you other than yourself, except for those that you contract with, that you enter into agreements and accept the consequences of those agreements if you fail to live by them. So anyway, that's basically where my line of coming to this point. Yeah, I mean, I even at one point worked for the state as a contractor, making websites for the state of New Mexico, the Human Services Department, which actually gives food stamps and welfare, checks and all that kind of stuff. The public, the land management office, Public Regulation Commission. So all the bad stuff, I actually helped work with them and make them have an internet presence. One of their earlier websites that they've now upgraded from what I did. But yeah, it was just like this big slap in the face though when Molyneux explained the truth about how we are in kind of like this matrix or on a farm in our livestock.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it takes that one little nudge to answer really all the questions that you kind of already knew in your own head, but you couldn't really explain it, I guess, out loud to yourself. And for a lot of people, I mean, myself included, I was a libertarian for 5 years, it was a hard pill to swallow to realize that the state is just nothing but one big violent extortion racket. And it started with the what was going on with the Ron Paul thing in 2012. You witness that and you go, wow, okay, well, yeah, obviously you can't change the system through elections. So if you can't change things and make things better through elections, you got to start really questioning your beliefs in government. And I found for me that really opened up a lot of doors uh, for me when I made the jump over to voluntarism. Larkin Rose, Stefan Molyneux, David Friedman, and all those big names. I found when you make your transitions, whether you're a Republican, Democrat, statist, libertarian, anarchist, you always find those little doors to open to help you nudge your way down that path.
Yeah, for me, it was pretty straightforward. I didn't run into a lot of any other things besides those two, ideas. Like, I know that Milton Friedman's a Chicago school economist, um, so it was not that big of a leap for me to jump from there to Austrian economics, just because they're very similar. But as far as the principles of liberty and so on, Milton Friedman said at one point in time that the reason why he holds his particular philosophy about how government shouldn't interfere with other people's lives is that he's not going to be arrogant enough to say that I'm right. He might be wrong about whether or not drug use is good for you or bad for you. Maybe for some people it's actually good for them to help them through whatever it is that they're dealing with. Maybe it's helping them deal with the stresses that they have through their life. Maybe it's helping them perform music better or create artistry better. Who knows? There's all sorts of different subjective preferences that we will all have, and his perspective on that, unfortunately, didn't lead to a true understanding that it actually applies across the board to everything. His son, fortunately, was able to figure that out, but for Molyneux to say it so concisely that there are these people who have you plugged into their machine and all they're doing is sucking the lifeblood out of you, is that we tried to create this institution called government to be a great resource to help us, but in actuality it turned against us. It was just mind-blowing, and at that point there was no gradual process for me. I just I was always kind of like libertarian-esque because of Milton Friedman's economic stuff, but the slap in the face just woke me up instantly. I could have actually easily just have watched Larkin Rose's The Jones Plantation, or the a message to the voting cattle. Either one of those would also have done the same job. They would have both done the same trick. It just happened that I ran into Molyneux in that case. But all four of those videos are mind-blowing, awakening videos. Some are more coarse, more difficult to digest for certain people who are not as I don't know, willing to explore things in a very obnoxious way. I mean, I don't mind having drag-out, knockdown fights as far as debate goes. So when somebody hits me over the head with really coarse terms and visuals and concepts, I'm fine with it. I'll just go ahead and move forward and understand it and try to ingest it and let it sink in, instead of being offended and like tight, thin-skinned types. You probably want to expose them to things like maybe Tom Woods, or actually he might be a little too brutal. But yeah, you're going to find that there are going to be some people who are going to deliver the message a little more softly. Julie Borowski, or Josie Wales, absolutely a wonderful deliverer. Of course, both being female, surprise, surprise, they're probably going to be a little softer to hear for some people. But anyway, that to me, it's just a wake-up call that was instant. I don't know why it is that it takes people so long to figure it out when it seemed obvious to me with Molyneux's videos. They were just so clear-cut. It was. How can you deny this? It's obvious.
Yeah, right. Totally agree, man. I think a lot of people they live their lives. I think their lives and everything they know and everything they believe, everything they've been taught, I think is like this one big bubble. They live their life in a bubble, and they don't want to be told that everything that they know, everything they've been taught, everything they believe is really based on a lie. And when you try to point it out to them, even if you do it nicely and respectfully, they a lot of times will get very offended and very defensive when they feel like their beliefs are being backed into a corner, and they typically don't respond very well when you do. But those who continue to be open to new ideas, people who are continuing to question the government, people who are continuing to question their own beliefs, will always, I found, be open to different opinions and different points of view, and will normally respond a little nicer because they're already at that point in their life where if they're open to something, they're already starting to realize something's wrong. And I found through the freedom movement, you can look at the range of the libertarians, and you'll find that the messages are all uniquely different. Some of them are softer, some of them are more direct in your face. Some of them could be more coarse and offensive. I won't give any names, but I think you kind of know who I'm talking about when I when I say that, in case that person's watching the show. But you got to understand that not everyone's going to agree with everybody 100%, and you got to really be open to different perspectives and new ideas until someone comes around that says something to you that goes, that's it, and you don't really ever go back. And it's really an awesome experience when you get to that point.
Yeah, I agree. If you can bring people in through other things, I think it's a lot easier for those types of people. It just kind of depends on how much of an identity they place on their political, perspective. If it's critical to their identity, then they aren't very likely to take whatever it is that you're going to present to them with open ears. So my recommendation is that if you're a voluntarist, that you spend as much time in activities that are not necessarily the voluntarist community, but certainly understand. You should understand the philosophy of it very, very clearly. You need to get down into the nitty-gritty as to why it is that the non-aggression principle is not the root of everything. It's actually property rights. Self-ownership is the root of everything, and then the non-aggression principle evolves from that. But you can't just start it at that point, because some people will tear you apart. They'll provide examples, and you'll be like, "What the hell? How do I deal with the situation where you've got a cabin in the woods and you're going to die if you don't break into the cabin?" All these different lifeboat situations and so on. It sounds like it's an easy thing to do, but really get all the principles down, completely understand where it is that Austrian economics comes from. Praxeology. You got to understand that. You got to understand time preference. You got to understand the price system. You've got to understand the incentives that are associated with businesses that become abusive of their customers or their employees, and how the market actually corrects that. And then once you've got all those things down, then you need to be out there in other areas where, let's say, you're going to do yoga and you're hanging out and doing your yoga thing, and you start talking about some of the liberating factors of yoga and enjoy the heck out of it, or whatever. Or maybe you're playing basketball, or maybe you're farming, or making your own neighborhood garden, or whatever. any interest that you have that's outside of the voluntarist movement, you need to make sure that you're engaging with other people in a way that provides them an opportunity to see how you are morally principled, and to bring the conversation about why it is that you are morally principled um, to happen. People are going to ask you questions, and that's when you can talk to them about it. Going out there and proselytizing, nobody really likes the Mormons knocking on the door, or Jehovah's Witnesses, or whatever the heck you want. It's annoying. So if you don't want to be tacky, uh, be a person of interest, a person who actually is creative and productive in other ways, in other areas, and get people involved. I myself, whenever I'm playing poker, I like to talk with people who are playing poker about a variety of different subjects that are interesting. I'm always very respectful of the game, and of people's rights to be treated properly in a an etiquette-based environment. So when somebody starts being a dick to another player, I get on their ass and I beat the tar out of them and take all their money and punish them, whatever it is, so that I can be someone who is respected in that environment, and then have people ask me my opinion about something, and I'll explain to them why. And it's because I'm grounded in property rights, self-ownership, and how that affects everything else, and then I can explain things to them, from the get-go. I don't have to say, well, let me get back to you on that one, because I've got the principles down, and I can extrapolate, and I can ask them questions back to get them to think in the ways that we think. By doing it in that environment, you're creating more opportunity for them to feel open to the concepts you're going to discuss. They may ask you for sources that are relevant to what it is that you're talking about, so you should probably know some of those. But in general, I think that preaching to the choir is all fine and dandy, but you also need to be out there and doing something else in the public. And you said something about the political scene, how it's not a way for us to actually cause change. I disagree. I think that there are people who go into political campaigns as a marketing tool to spread the message, not necessarily with the interest of becoming a political winner. So it's not necessarily the most cost-effective way, because it's kind of expensive, but if you happen to have all that kind of money, or if you can get the kind of backing like Ron Paul did, then you're going to change a lot of minds. You're going to reach a lot of people, because you're actually out there being a principled person who, like Ron Paul did with using his economic knowledge to forecast the downfall of the housing market. That really resonates with people. So if you can go into other industries and do the same thing, great. But politics isn't off limits. It's just if you win, you best be doing something like, well, I don't want a salary, or I'm going to veto, and I'm going to veto, and I'm going to veto every single thing, except for the bills that say, let's cut this program, that type of thing. But I think that it's a way to actually get the message out there, so I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, good stuff, man. Excellent points. We have a little bit of time left. I want to be able to dive into talking about the abandonment of rights. So, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, one of the things that we often, when we start talking about anarcho-capitalism, the big thing is that it's already accepted that you own yourself. And when we say own, we don't really mean own as in like I can just it's a separate object that I have ownership of. It is the final decision-making right. I am the final decider for what happens with this stuff. In my body, I am the final decider that what happens with my stuff. Now, the idea that you, let's say, have a sandwich, and you take the sandwich and you put it on a table, park table, while you're at the park, and you go over and you play some frisbee. If your sandwich is gone when you return to the table, after let's say 30 minutes, probably a theft has occurred. If you take your sandwich and you put it on the trash bin and you go off and play frisbee for 30 minutes and it's gone, then it's not stolen. It's kind of a societal norm as to what it is that is abandonment and what isn't abandonment.
I got you.
Now, when it comes to property, let's say, for example, you go out and you set up some fencing around some land, and you're going to build a homestead there. You're going to turn it into a ranch, but your grandmother in England is suffering from some illness, and you go off and visit her, and are having tough times with that type of thing, and you can't go out to this property. Well, at some point in time, if you continue to neglect the property and not use it over, some duration of time, you've essentially abandoned it such that other people can homestead it. Now, this is a societal norm. What it is that is expected of you to maintain ownership of the property. Now, there are other norms that can occur where, let's say, a person wants to squat the land, and they might try living on the land for a period of 5 years, and if nobody kicks them off of this land, then they have a claim that they own the land, and you've given up your claim to the land. Sometimes it's like, I don't know, in some cases it was like 30 years for Louisiana, I think it was. There are some cases where they require that you put a minimum of a quarter-size panel in a newspaper to claim that you are usurping the property, or that there are some cases where you can do a certified letter to the owner of the property that you are going to take ownership of it from him. And if he does not respond with a counterclaim saying, no, you cannot take the land from me within a certain period of time, within a certain rights management system, that the property will then become yours. If he does respond, then he has to indicate, has to show some sort of homesteading action that has occurred that indicates that he is actually using the land for some for some growth purpose. There's a variety of different methods that are dealt with that are used in different societies. I don't think that the voluntarist system has any particular methodology that is prescriptive of how this would work. Some people will say that no, you've homesteaded the land once and it's yours forever, because maybe you're wanting to leave the land specifically to lay fallow for some purpose. Maybe you're planning on growing crops in the future. I don't know. I think that there's going to be a market decision that occurs in this realm. I think that it is kind of a choice that is dependent upon the market. There will be prices associated with various different actions, and if a person does not continue to have a presence on their land, if they do not continue to have I don't know, usage of the land in some fashion, whether it be through having cameras or guards protecting the habitat for some animals. Let's say if you're doing a preserve for animals, maybe it's as simple as that. I don't know, but the market will actually have to determine these factors as to when the land has been considered to be relinquished because of abandonment. Now, another question, though, is, does this apply to other rights, specifically parental rights? And parental rights, a lot of times people will use the term property rights to describe the relationship between a parent and a child, that the child is their property, and so on. I don't like that. I think that it's a demeaning term. I think it's not appropriate. I think that a parent has a parental obligation and also certain rights that are associated with being the person who is temporarily the advocate for the child's own self-ownership. But if a parent abuses their child or neglects their child in a way that is obvious, that is clear as day that this is neglect or abuse, then it is my claim that after a recent conversation that I had, that this may actually provide enough a option for another person to squat the rights that the parent is abrogating, that they're not exercising their rights appropriately, that they're not actually homesteading or parenting their child. So if a child is being malnourished, not fed, not clothed, not sheltered, and someone else goes and starts to clothe or shelter or feed this child for a certain period of time, then perhaps the market may provide a system by which they could sue for parental rights for the child, in the same way that the property was being abandoned as well. So it's an interesting thought. I'm not completely sure, how to develop it. I'm wanting to write up an article, but I don't know exactly where to submit it. I guess liberty.me or maybe Lou Rockwell or Mises.org. If I type up this article, I don't know exactly what to do with it. But does that make a sense as far as what you would understand as to how bad parenting might be addressed in a free market?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in both scenarios that you described, I think there would absolutely be a place for an arbitration firm to take the place of uh, defending individual rights and taking the place of government laws, um, where you can use a scenario of, well, okay, you own this land, and what would happen? What would you be able to do if someone came onto your land and trampled your crops? But there's no government around, so what are you going to do? So I mean, that's always like the paradox that we always got to try to
Oh,
explain.
that's pretty straightforward. I mean, you hire thugs to protect your property, and you hire thugs to go extract the funds that are necessary from the person who has caused you property damage, and then if they don't have an arbitration firm, well then you get your money, or you do whatever. But the reason why that doesn't happen in a free market is because of repeat dealings. That you will, regular basis, you will have people interacting with each other over and over and over again, and we don't want to see this kind of bullying stuff that where you've got the Hatfields and McCoys, where guys are grabbing guns and going out and saying, well, you did this and you did that. So with the repeat dealings, you even saw this in the Wild West, that sheriffs, which were actually kind of just hired hands with guns, would negotiate with other sheriffs in the area to provide, consistency. So, yeah, I don't see that as being a problem at all. But as far as like the abandonment issue, I think that's a different thing. Defending your property against damage, different topic.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. I'd love to go on with this more. It's a very interesting topic, but we're pretty much out of time, so we got to end the show here. Um, so I really want to thank you, Robert, for taking the time to be on the show with us tonight.
And I'll try to talk about that topic more this Tuesday night, tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on After Hours. We'll try to go into the abandonment and parenting rights a little bit more.
All right, good stuff, man. Good stuff. Well, thanks everyone for joining us tonight. This is Freedom Live, broadcasted from Voluntary Virtues Network. And as always, I'm your host, Mike Dano, and have a good night. Bye-bye.